And good evening and welcome to the Diamond Show. This is Bradley Chapman broadcasting to you live on Radio Works News. So wherever you are around the world, welcome to the Diamond Show. This evening we have a fabulous show lined up for you and a most fabulous guest for this evening. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you Ysanne Lewis, author of The Time Catcher, international traveller, all-round lovely lady, and inspiring business coach to boot. There's so much to talk about tonight with Ysanne. It's a great pleasure to have a ball. Good evening to you, Ysanne Lewis, and how are you?
Good evening, Bradley Chapman. I'm very well. Beautiful evening, blue skies. Makes a change.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So how's your day been today? What sort of day have you had before we get into our interview? How's your day been? Has it been engaging and positive?
Well, I did an interview this morning with Agatha, who's Radio Works World host. I've been writing a blog. I've been booking in some clients. I went for a walk on my hillside above me. It's a beautiful day, and now I'm here.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, this evening, we're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about being an author. We're going to talk about the changes in business, but most importantly, we're going to discuss just a little bit about time and your book and how time time is so important within our life. This is my first question. Umar Hussain is joining up, and he's saying good evening. I think you've had the pleasure to meet Umar at Radio Works events. Umar owns a private hire taxi firm in Chelmsford, Morgan, Stansted, Happy Cabs, and he's also proudly sponsoring. Yes, he's also proudly sponsoring the show this week. And just to give him a little plug, he's about to start writing his first book about entrepreneurship and being Umar Hussain. It's a very interesting story. He also features in my own book, which is called Get Up, Show Up, Shine Up, which is available on Amazon. But we're going to jump straight into the questions. Tell me a little bit about your book, The Art of the Time Catcher, and the art of timing, because being the expert in this field. Tell us a bit about the book and what the viewers could take from it and what it could do for them.
Right. Well, I was termed the timing expert. So that's very nice. And because I've been working in my field with timing for the last 38 years, it's a long while. I don't know how many people actually have one career for 38 years. And when I started, I certainly had no intention of doing it for more than about a year. I wanted to be self-employed. But I think I had a calling because it grew. It grew, like I suppose, like a person does, like a child does. And the book on timing came about through Radio Works World, which is beautiful. I am a writer. I've written for years. I've had half-finished novels started, and particularly with my work, which primarily was as an astrologer, I did about several years training in the days. This dates me when there were no computers, so I was doing all the logarithms and maths, which I was so bad at school. And I was remembering in your book, Bradley, how you just kept going and persevering. I wasn't even allowed to take GCSEs. So I did all that myself. Why? Because I had a passion. And of course, computers came along, and we know they can be rather contrary at times, but they're wonderful because you can do all those calculations just like that, and then you've got it there, no mistakes, and you can work with the person. So I hadn't written or had a book published, many articles, and I met Marina, and as well as asking me if I'd like to be the timing host on Radio Works World a bit later, and the shows went down very well. I was talking about timing in general for the everyday person. She asked me if I'd write a book, which I did. So that's how the book came about, and she really wanted it ready for the, I think the event at the W.O.R.K.S Hotel Whitehall for the awards there, and I wrote it in 3 weeks. I did. Lots of little errors in it, no doubt, but I wrote it in 3 minutes. And I felt so happy, Bradley, when I was writing it. It felt like my heart was softening. It was dissolving all the fortifications, fears, problems within me. And I neglected cleaning the kitchen floor, dusting anything in my house. Because I don't know about you, but I work from home mainly. And it's so easy to distract ourselves unless we're actually with a client. So I just wrote, and then it was published. And I never wanted to write for astrologers. I didn't want to write star sign column books. I know they sell quite well, but it gives it such a bad name. We were talking about that earlier. If I tell you that there's 2,500 variables in a birth chart, like when we start now at 7 o'clock, there's a chart for that. 2,500 variables. The art of astrology is to synthesize, to make it accessible and useful to the business person, to the person. So I just felt that having done the shows, I was able to talk about timing in a very accessible way. I sometimes think the book is too simple, but people have told me it's inspiring, it's helpful, it makes them happy. I know you've read a bit of it. I'd like to feel it's made you happy, Bradley.
I enjoyed it. I mean, just your comment, and just to interject, you spoke about writing, your book in 3 weeks, and of course you've got an amazing history and experience of working in the business sector and changing people's lives. But yes, when you're writing your book, and for anyone that's perhaps thinking about writing their book, for me, my story about writing a book, I actually started writing a book in 2010. And at the time, I'd interviewed a guy called Dr. John DeMartini from the DeMartini Institute, lovely man in London. But I was going through a transformation in myself, my business. I was going through a bit of pain. I was losing my business. I got a couple of things right. I got some amazing things right, but I got a couple of things wrong. I went back into just working full-time as interim directors for various companies. I then started picking up my book again. I think it was last August. I started thinking about it, thinking about what I was going to put in it, and I was working on Yes You Can, and then Bradley Chapman. Actually, it wasn't until I met Marina that actually I changed the way that I was going to write, and then I wrote my book in 5 days. But when you're writing, and it was like night and day. I couldn't stop. It was like once that tap was turned on, everything started to just sort of come out. And as you say, when you're writing your book, you get so immersed in it and engaged in it, and you're almost living every single part of that book in your mind, aren't you? And how did you feel once you published the book and it went out? How did you feel?
Fantastic. Fantastic. It really, really did. And it was early December, and I got my first copy to have a look at it, the proof. Of course, we do that. We see everything, but we do, the author. And I brought them along to the W.O.R.K.S World event, and it was so lovely, Bradley, to feel it in my hands. Initially I wanted the art of timing, and Marina and I came up with the idea of the time catcher. Catching time was taken, I think, so the time catcher was it. And people said, it sounds like a novel. I thought, well, if that draws them to open the book, so be it. Yes?
Absolutely.
So it was lovely.
So it was amazing. I mean, and it is. I share that sentiment with you because it is. And I understand you're going to be writing. Are you going to write another book? You're in the process of writing the second book. Is that right? Or another book? Or I think you've already got 2 books. Is that right already?
Well, I've got a book which I was starting to write over the last 15 years based on workshops I used to run. And again, it's about time, more on the soul level. So I've tried to make this particular book open to people who aren't particularly spiritually oriented, or they are, or they're business oriented, or they're not. I think it was quite clever, in inverted commas, how I was guided when I wrote this. I do feel I was guided. And you mentioned about writing, I've got a lot of history, and all of a sudden it comes together. And when you know your subject well, I think you have the art of making something simple. And they always say that if you can use analogy, if you can make something simple, you know what you're talking about. Would you agree?
I do, absolutely, because if you can put something into a very few amount of words, those can, so you can have a short sentence, a short analogy, and it completely captivates and depicts exactly what you're trying to get across, and people can understand that. I want to talk to you a little bit about your business coach. I mean, you work with clients, all across the world, and you've coached stockbrokers. You've worked with clients in New York, Dubai, Hong Kong, and Africa. And I understand you've worked with a couple of fairly high-profile stockbrokers. Just talk to me a little bit about New York, because I'm interviewing a guy called Greg Carroll from
I
Brooklyn,
know.
New York. Yeah, later
Yeah.
in the week. So what's it like coaching
Yeah.
a stockbroker? Because their lifestyles are very, very busy, very hectic. It's changed somewhat in the last 4 or 5 years, stockbroking. It's not the same volume that it used to be. And a lot of the markets now rely on versatility, movement within the market, to make a profit. But what's your experience like of coaching and talking to one of your clients, like a New York stockbroker? What's that like, and how do you help them?
How do I help them? We can look at the stock market. I can look at where the planetary cycles are aligning when you match, if you like, planetary cycles up with commodities, feed prices in, all that kind of thing. And I've done a certain amount of work with that. I say surprisingly, because there are people who've done more, I find I've had very good results. Now, I am very intuitive as well. I wouldn't want to rely on that. And I love the template. I love the language, if you like, of using the planetary cycles. And I'm emphasizing planetary cycles rather than the word astrology, which people tend to link just with the star signs. So in a way, it's astronomy, because we can't debate that there are angles between planets. And cycles do permeate everything. What I find interesting is that I had a whole period of time of working with men in their late 30s, early 40s. Some of them had come to me through their wives, their partners who'd had readings with me, and their children, and they wanted to look at their own businesses and timings of change. But they ended up usually wanting to talk also about their own self, their own cycles, and the other possibilities. And the people I've drawn to me have been quite intuitive themselves. They want to have a purpose. They want to make a difference on the planet. In fact, I've often found that people born around about the early to late 1960s have got this kind of drive inside to make a difference. To make a difference.
Does that include me? I was born in 70.
Oh, right. No, but there were planetary cycles at the time. Yeah, I know you were. Planetary cycles lined up. Very special. Things accelerated rapidly, I feel, in the 60s. We know that. And so, yes, I've definitely helped stockbrokers to do, and also with investments. What you mentioned earlier in our conversation about how business is changing, and I think that so many people I've encountered have wanted to leave. In fact, an economic predictor I was working with in London, he had a very good position in a bank, and he was fascinated with this trader W.D. Gann I mentioned to you. He's worked with the planetary cycles and the stock market, and he worked with that, and he wanted to leave, but he had a wife and a young child on the way. In the end, I think he went back to part-time working with the bank, and he really wanted to work in a different way. So I'm finding that many people are wanting to get out of mainstream employment to set up their own businesses or offshoots, consultancies. So that's where my work really comes into its own, about the timing of that, whether they should. And above all, the timing of the starting point. Because starting points, you said that earlier, quite vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, this is how I believe. I'm pretty aligned to you there that business is changing and life is changing, and my belief, my absolute belief, is that life is getting tougher for a lot of people, and I call it the squeeze. The squeeze is on, and I think in a lot of people's lives right now, what's happening psychologically is there's a lot of people accepting what's being dealt to them by the government, by inflation, by life, by wages not right, and they're just accepting it. And what they're doing is they're accepting their wages aren't going up. They're accepting that costs are going up. So wages in effect are going down because of inflation. It's not in line. So their costs are going up, their wages are going down, and it's creating a squeeze within their household. Now, what we're doing for a lot of people is we are accepting the psychological processes coming to us, and we're saying, well, we've got to cut back, we've got to cut back, we've got to cut back. There's a lot of other people that saying, I don't want to cut back, I want to grow. There are more things that I want in life and I want to achieve in life, and it's that are making that break away in their life to say, I'm going to start a business, or I want to break free from what I'm doing, or I feel that I'm worthy of something more, of something greater. And then, of course, they're going for a massive mind shift. And this time catcher plays a vital part, because they're looking back upon their life, what they've achieved, where their life is. And time plays, for me, such a vital part, because when they do make that transition, they can stay in their jobs and they can look in the evening, on the weekends. But I think for me, with business, the way it's changed with entrepreneurship, is that before anybody starts this journey, which I call the diamond journey, they have to make the biggest sacrifice in their life to move forward. And they're going to go through a river of pain. We were talking about this before we went live, weren't we? Because my computer crashed again from the virus I had yesterday on Facebook, and I was trying to reboot my machine to get live. There are so many adversities that you're going to face in business and in life to move forward, but you can move forward. How do you deal with personal growth and helping people to understand personal growth and what they can do about it? Because if they believe in personal growth, if they accept that they can develop themselves and they are capable, there's a diamond inside them, they will grow. Now, I'm the master of that. I'm learning all the time. I love putting myself through the challenge and the pain of forward. But sometimes the pain's unbearable because you're not getting the traction you want immediately. It does come if you keep going. But let's talk about personal development for a little bit. How important is it, Ysanne? And what do you do to help people with their personal development through the services you offer?
It's a very good question, because everything is personal. As somebody once said, but other ways of taking something. And our business, if you like, also is our baby. Think about that. Our book is our baby, and it has its growth phases. So basically, when I work with a client, yes, I will calculate the coordinate time of birth. Do you know your time of birth?
My time of birth was, I think it was 6:30 in the morning.
Oh, your morning baby then. Okay. Do you like the mornings?
It depends. What's happened to me? Well, I'd love to say I do love the mornings, but what's happened to me over the last sort of few months is I've got a lot of people I'm talking to in India, Canada, different time zones in the US. So I'm having to start late to talk to them. I'm talking to LA, LA sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking to India. By the time I'm just about to go to sleep, India's waking up. We've got Australia. So my timing's all over the place at the moment. It seems that
yeah, that's very true. But sometimes the time of day you're born, I'm sorry, just cutting out a little bit. What did you say?
I just said, no, I'm just getting lots of attraction from other countries around the world at the moment. So I'm on Bradley time zone.
Okay. No, it's sometimes the time we're born, the season we're born in, this has been quite well reported, shows up how best we operate, our optimum time. And sometimes people born near dawn are morning people, not always though. So I calculate the chart with the time of birth, the same I would do for a business chart, a company, the full date of birth and the longitude and latitude, which is the town of birth, basically, the country. And then you've got all this huge map. And then you can see the cycle set into motion. Now, this is not fortune telling or fate, but it's a difference sometimes between swimming against the tide and going with it. And I would say that actually we do know our own timing. I'd like to feel my clients who come to me appreciate nothing to pay for on their time. They are prepared and they are aware. So they actually say, yes, they were feeling that was the right time to take a pause, to start, to bridge something. Very rarely do I meet people where they think differently. And it's not because I'm putting the idea in their mind. They've actually already thought it. And because the birth chart is you, it's a mirror of you, all those cycles are there. And all I'm doing is kind of, giving them an airing. So we all doubt. It's like going out on a journey and your sat nav's wonky or the map's old, yeah? And you ask someone the way, they never so well, don't they? But they tell you to turn left and right, and there you are. So it's getting back in touch with your own inner compass, which you know. And I'm not a lazy person, but I'm a great believer in giving. Hi, Umar. I'm a great believer in pausing, and to know today is not the right day for something, or when I need a rest. And I really trust my instincts that way, because when we overload, And we are living in a time period of being overloaded. And we feel the urgency, the panic to keep working because money may disappear, as you were sort of saying earlier. Then we burn ourselves out. And we wouldn't enjoy a piece of music or a dance if there wasn't a kind of pausing, yeah? And I think we need to apply that to our own. And you know what you said about business and personal development? I think this year particularly, and as we go into 2018, there's a need to simplify things. And to simplify business as well, and that's a big conversation.
How do you think people simplify things? What do you think we need to do to simplify life and business? Because there's only so much time in the day.
Absolutely.
And managing your time in the day so that you become productive as opposed to counterproductive, or effective as opposed to being ineffective, is an art. And even myself, at this stage in the Diamond Experience launch, everything is going on. There's multiple Facebook pages, there's blogs, there's articles, there's live, shows which we're doing now. There's so much to go on with regard to building a site, building your brand, everything you're doing. That your day, of course, you've got your clients and your programs and everything that you're developing. So time's very, very important to manage. And for me, I call it the waves. When I'm in flow and my energy's there and everything's aligned, I just go boom, 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 and everything hits and everything goes. And I think viewers can probably, understand this. If they're watching, they're going to probably find there's going to be these tides of energy where they feel they can be so creative and so effective, and their timing is great. And equally, there's these days where you're ineffective, you're trying to make it happen, it's going wrong from a technical point of view, from a thought process point of view. But becoming more effective with your time, and I could probably learn from this, and I'm sure a lot of people watching could learn from this. If you become more effective, more aware of your time, and perhaps break down the day into certain slots of when you're doing things, you're going to become more effective, right? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need to know our own kind of rhythms. We can't be totally spoiled and have it exactly how we want. But if we want to work for ourselves in particular, and these are the kind of people I'm generally working with, rather than perhaps employees as such, or maybe they're running a branch themselves or an area, a compartment of a business, and they have some autonomy.
Sure.
It's very important to know when you're operating at your best. Like I was saying earlier, I wrote better at night. No way would I write much in the morning unless I really had to, editing something different. So we need to know ourselves. That is the art of simplicity, is to know oneself, what works for one and what doesn't. Now, because I have a sort of kind of head start on this through understanding the planetary cycles, and to know the times when it's going to be like going through treacle or mudmore, and other times when it's just a flow. Yes, so I do. So I wish I could bottle that and give that to everybody, or they need to learn it themselves, but this is what I do. So people come to me and they perhaps I can span out the month ahead for them, or weekly, just to give them an idea of how they can use their energy the best. And when they can't, they have no choice in it, and they have to do something to be aware of it, to remember to breathe, to take even tiny little cat naps maybe. Just even 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and to work with it differently. Outside, we have to really be aware that we have a destiny, a unique one, because there's nobody else like you, nobody else like me, and to strengthen that inner core, to put the heart into it more when we know our energy is weaker, or perhaps even to ask for help, to delegate more of those times.
Asking for help is quite an important one, and I'm just going to put that up on the screen, because it is asking for help, and so many of us, including me, we don't do it enough, and we should reach out, and I think that let me just show that on the screen there. Asking for help is so important, but we don't ask enough. And we do need to ask for help, because as entrepreneurs, when you go through your journey, you do need to get advice and feedback from people. You do need to be comfortable to reach out for help and ask for advice from other business owners and entrepreneurs that have been there, that have seen it, that have done it. And also, indeed, from your family. You need the support of your family on your journey as well, which tends to keep you balanced and stable. And also asking for help is actually a strength, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a strength, not a weakness. But even myself,
No.
I struggle sometimes to you know, to ask for help, you know, because I've been through so much of my life, had so many experiences, but you forget to ask for help. And just by asking for help, somebody may just come back with a message where that you needed to hear, that was crying out, and an answer previously.
Absolutely. And I think also that when we're open to it, we allow, it's like putting your hands, you allow, actually the right thing does come in at the right time, the right person does come in, the right phone place. Sacred space, I think that applies to as much as to anything else. And I think, I forget who said it, but there's a lovely quote, that if we don't find time for recreation, to recreate ourselves, sooner or later we'll be obliged to find time for illness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we're only humans, we're not machines. Our bodies are from nature, even if our souls are from elsewhere. Our bodies are from nature, and we have these rhythms. So I think when we start out working for ourselves, an entrepreneur, whatever, we think, oh yeah, I've got the skills, I've got the training, whatever. But it's very, very different, and so different. And I know that I gave up all my hobbies. Work goes into all sorts of hours, and so it should. But it's so important to have those creative pauses. It's so important because it feeds us, doesn't it? The well has to fill up again. So yes, I work with the planet, looking at those pausing points as well. There's a lovely signature called the moon void of course. So when the moon is changing sign, it changes every 2.5 days. The moon is a timer. Even when we work with the stock market, it's the moon which makes a difference.
Yes, it does.
So the moon Sorry, you're cutting out there. Sorry. Back in.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I cut across you there, Ysanne.
We sort of cut in there. I couldn't really hear. Okay. So yeah, about the moon. When it's changing sign, it's not forming an aspect, a strong one, like anything on the 30s, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180. Those are very important angles of ease and tension. When they're not forming any angle, that it's void. And you find those maybe for 5 minutes in the day, it could even be over a whole day, where things don't fall into place. That phone call never comes in. It's a quiet time, great for meditation or doing nothing. But if you know them, it can be really valuable. And if you sense it's there, just to wait. So I think the pausing is as much of an importance as the doing, you know, and the being. So, yeah.
What's your advice there? I mean, look, so a lot of people work from home.
Yes.
A lot of people work from home, and of course, you know, you're talking about making sure make sure you can be effective. You know, I'm probably just as bad on that, because I'll just work and work and work and work, and I probably won't get out. I just have this raft of working away. But of course, you have to get out there, don't you, Ysanne? And you have to take a breather. And someone would talk when I had writer's block, and they said to me, you know, Brad, just go out, be around nature, and you know, give yourself a bit of a breathe and come back, and then you'll be absolutely fired up, you know. And that's what I did. And then I come back after having a quick break, and then energy was flowing again, and I was getting full rhythm. But it's recognizing when, as you said earlier, you've got your feet in the mud, you're getting a bit sticky. It's recognizing that and trying to catch it earlier so that you become much more effective. I wanted to ask you another question. I'm just going to go up to the agenda. Just bear with me. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you know, your sort of claim to fame. And I know that you've travelled all over the world. You've spoken on stage. You've written books. You've coached clients internationally. What was the defining moment for you, Ysanne, that you would say that you really enjoyed, that you was really proud of, that you got the rewards from doing so? Was there a defining moment on stage, or working with a client, or what was that moment that you most cherish?
Well, they started in 1979 when you were only 9.
Okay.
I know. So it's very hard to know, because it was so seamless, Bradley. It really, really was. Because, as I said, I didn't want to do this for a long while. I'd had other careers before, and I just wanted to be self-employed. But I think it was being on stage because although I had an acting background, I was a very shy child, and it was very scary when I was first asked to give talks on my subject. Oh, and there was a moment when I could let go of the notes. I could engage with the audience more. I didn't mind making a fool of myself. For example, you've probably known this, that you could be talking to an audience and you suddenly forget what you've been saying.
Yes.
For whatever reason. And in the old days, I would just kind of gloss over it and find a way around it. And then one day I just thought, you know what? That's rubbish. So I stopped and I thought, you know what? I've forgotten what I was saying. And then somebody in the audience always loves to tell you. Those are listening as well. So moments like that, if it was speaking, to be able to, because one-on-one clients can be very, very tiring as well.
Yes, of
Particularly
course.
some people come in, they're much in trauma, but there's a crisis. Some people do come out of pure interest, curiosity. They really want to work with this as a tool. But many people come, particularly when the layers are dissolved a bit, to see the underlying reasons why they've come. I'm a bit of a psychologist at heart. So I found giving talks, workshops as well, very rewarding, and my own authority would come through. And I think that's when I realized that I've got a gift and it's growing all the time. I'm still learning, It's magical, really.
You know, I'm getting the feeling that actually you're about to go on a very energized drive in your life, in your career. I'm getting the feeling of another book. I'm getting the feeling of this really positive energy from you, that you're about to embark upon another wave of energy within your business and the services you offer. Am I right in thinking that? Am I getting the right feeling there, or?
Yeah, but it's always good to hear it. It's always good to hear it. Because I've been marketing my book a lot. I've been seeing my clients. And there's things in my personal life going on. And I just felt this year a little bit calm. It's nice. You can actually just stop and let the wind do its thing and turn the engine off for a little bit. And I've allowed things to come to me more this year. And it's been absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. People really always say I help them. They like having me around, which is great. So I don't feel as though it's just been one way. And Radio Works World has definitely been a big part of that. But I am ready. So I have got a lot of energy when I feel passionate about something. And yes, I'm ready for new adventures. I want to do more speaking. I want to do another book. Yes, things of that kind. As well as see my wonderful clients, have new ones come in.
Fantastic. So thank you. So personal growth, again, is something that we all go through all the time if we want to, and if we want to keep developing. We keep shedding what I call the diamond skin. So as we learn something new, and as we learn something new, whether that be through reading a book, learning online, or an experience in a new skill that we're trying to learn, whether that be a technological skill, a speaking skill, a business skill, how to manage your teams effectively, how to be a great MD and CEO, how to understand your mind and how it works, and the best way to be able to get your mindset into the right place so you can be really motivated, and right through to emotions and understanding your emotions, and obviously working from the inside out, not the outside in. All of these things within the personal development world are so important, because I think somebody like yourself, Ysanne, can help people with their mindset, with their time. I think if you get the mindset right and you can get your timings right, then you can be more effective, in your business.
Yes.
And you're a very calming lady as well. I mean, I've met you a couple of times. You're a very good lady. You're very well read. You're engaging. There's a really fantastic warmth around you. And I'm not surprised the business owners, stockbrokers, and people around the world are attracted to you, because you're very calm. Where does that calmness come from? Where does it come from?
Oh, that's funny. Well, yeah, people do tell me I have a calming influence. I think I've got not exactly a low boredom threshold, but I've got a great deal of curiosity. That keeps me useful, I think. My father had that, other people in my family, the curiosity. And I think there's quite a lot of nervous energy there in a good way, a restless energy, a passionate energy. But I think around people, I don't know, I can't see myself from the outside, but I have that calming effect and my own sense of my own authority. I took a long while to get that, Bradley, because I think in life or a lot of people rebel against authority or they kowtow to it. And I think I've learned that to have an authority with power, the best power is gentleness, but it's power. This makes an impact. You know yourself, you're being authentic. So it took a long while to get there, but I got there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really fantastic discussion point, authority and power, because each of us that has taken the strength and the courage to want to change our lives, to be the masters of what we do, to be the authority or the go-to person within a certain field. There are different types and levels of authority, and you can be an authority but be an approachable authority. Yes. You can be an authority where the way that you dictate and control and determine and speak to or govern your audience, fans, followers, members. And I think people ultimately in today's life are attracted to authorities that are heartfelt, that are heart-centered, that understand life, that have empathy, but yet they have, an amazing amount of skill within their particular field of expertise. And I think that's what is changing. I think people are getting more attracted to authorities such as yourself, at the heart, and even myself, everything I'm trying to do with the Diamond Experience, I am doing. It's all about entrepreneurship. It's about heart-centered individuals that want to give, that want to help. Not just about money. We have to make money or we don't survive, but they like to support, and they've got a very kind-natured outlook on life, kind of looking at the law of attraction, and giving without asking, in return. So I think authority is a great conversation. I think the world's changing, and I think we're getting more, heart-centered entrepreneurship. Let's move on to another question that I wanted to ask you. It's a personal question, really, because I guess in business we kind of got two masks. There's the mask that we put on when we're in public. We're talking about services or business or being the specialist person. We're right to say there's three lives. We've got a public life, a personal life, and a private life. In my personal life, I'm no different than anyone else that's in business. I have my ups and my downs and my challenges. Front face, in front of house. I'm focused, determined, motivated, the diamond maker. But we will also have some moments where we'll face some challenges in our life. No one's life gets away from adversity. I wanted to ask you, I've had bundles of adversity in my life. So much, in fact, it's made me who I am, and I'm humbled and gifted to be in this position, because what I've learned through pain and happiness in my experiences has given me the gift to be able to teach it. So can I ask you, what's your biggest adversity in your life, Ysanne?
Has been. I've had a roller coaster of a life. I never watched soap operas because I think mine has been a little bit. I had very yeah, right. You don't hear some of the stories. No, they're fun. I'm still alive. No, I had a very ordinary upbringing, good values, working middle class. But my parents engendered curiosity into me, which was great. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Probably still don't know. I wanted to be an explorer. I was a tomboy. May not look like it, but I was. And I wanted to have a purpose. And I remember asking God, I wasn't a believer in God, but whatever it was, to have a purpose when I was 14. I was a bit black and white, I think, as a person. And I've just done so many things. And I've always taken risks, always. But adversity, when I was 35, that's a very interesting age with cycles. Talk about 7-year cycles. 7 by 5, my maths are right. Now, many people, when they get to 35,
Yeah.
it's an opportunity to practice what you've been preaching or believing. And people do go through changes, 35, around about that age. There are other ages as well, but that's quite significant for soul growth. And I've been working, helping people a lot, and feeling sometimes that I hadn't been through adversity. How could I help people if I hadn't been through something? And I certainly didn't try and sabotage anything for myself, but I ended up going to America. I left my life in Bath, where I was living, and what I thought was love, impulsively went to live with a man there, very charismatic man, and left my life behind. And to cut a long story short, I knew very quickly this was not going to work. And synchronistically, he was an Olympic diver as well. He dived into the swimming pool and broke his neck. He became quadriplegic.
Oh my gosh.
Just about. I'd taken a bit of a sabbatical of 2 months out, and I was going to build a business there. He was a publisher. He was going to help me. And yeah, I could have picked up the phone. I could have gone back to England, but I stayed. And I think the challenge in that, what I saw in the LA hospital, how I got him off a ventilator, morphine, everything. So he wasn't taken to a psych ward. I got him, I got him to, what's the word? To try and live as normal a life as one could. And I had to work. I cleaned floors. I did my astrology work. I was on a 6-month visa in those days. And I came over to Scandinavia, Europe to see my clients, carrying my books. I was doing everything by hand and mathematics. This was in the early 80s. And yeah, I nursed him for a while. I had no obligation to stay. We'd only known each other 8 weeks in terms of living together. And then in the end, we became friends. And I did leave. At some point, was so short of money, I had to walk back to where I was staying in dangerous areas, and I managed it. I learned how to be invisible. I learned a great deal. And I also learned not to feel too guilty, because he expected a lot of me, and I knew that guilt was a wasted emotion. When I finally left, when I formed other partnerships, and I learned a lot about those kind of emotions. And then I left because I met my husband-to-be, who was from Austria and 15 years younger. And that was a kind of act of faith, I think, and came back and we married. It wasn't easy. And I think something was looking after me. But, Bradley, what I learned during that time was extraordinary. And adversity at times in my work where I could have given it up and gone back to employment. I wasn't earning enough money, and keeping going, keeping persevering, the diamond in me. So those are
That's a really fantastic. Story. That's really heartfelt, and thank you for sharing that, Ysanne. I mean, you never know really the person behind the skin unless it's shared, and that was a really fantastic share, by the way. Yeah, I'm going to thank you. That's really humbled me for you to talk about that. I want to ask. We want to move into another question then. This is one that's personal to me, and that you've mentioned it. You just said, is guilt a wasted emotion? And I've had a lot of guilt for a lot of things in my life. As I move forward, I'm sure people watching may be feeling the same way, but they can they control or let their emotions go in certain ways to handle this. But guilt is something that can be very painful if you hold on to it. And I've been I wouldn't say I'm victim holding on to guilt. I've made myself hold on to guilt, and I think you should let it go to move on. So is guilt a wasted emotion, and what can we do about that?
Well, I think I was obviously a general statement that, because I was brought up in the good girl about, I did rebel, but we had that background from that generation before, about how we did things, an obligation, you stayed in a job for life, you stayed in a marriage or partnership for life. Well, of course, all that's gone way out the window, hasn't it? So I remember a wise person saying to me, I was living in California, another planet, saying to me, don't let Jonathan, his name was, my partner, don't let Jonathan's needs eclipse your own. Eclipse your own, and because we've got eclipses coming up, and I think eclipses are clearing paths, and they do tend to show a lot of the shadows we have within us. And I learned gradually in that experience that I could help him more as well as myself by not literally overdoing. We were talking earlier about doing so much for our work, for our business, but the same applies being the caretaker. Who takes care of the caretaker? And I knew that by looking after myself, even sometimes saying no to him or leaving earlier when I visited him the times he was in hospital, was I was able to look after myself better, therefore look after him. I learned that, I think, at a relatively young age, 35, and it taught me a lot about how to apply that to business. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I think we can all learn so much about, you know, guilt, carrying guilt, letting guilt go, so that you become, you know, more effective. So listen, it's been a real humbling experience and pleasure to talk this evening. It has. And you know what? You know, the Diamond Show launched last week. We had challenges, right? With technical problems. We eventually got live, and called Sean Maroney, who owns Teens of America, and he's on this obesity challenge at the moment. Obesity Revolution is trending globally. Nice, amazing guy. Yeah. And now this week, in week 2, if you like, I was only going to do one a week on the Diamond Show, but I'm off on annual leave on about the 11th of August. I'm just trying to cram a few shows in before I go away. But so we're starting off tonight in London, well, in UK with yourself. Sorry, UK. Then tomorrow night we're going to New York. Then on Wednesday we're going to India. On Thursday we're going to Colorado, America. So I wanted to thank you for coming online and sharing, you know, Ysanne Lewis and what you do, and your book, The Time Catcher. It's been fabulous speaking with you, sharing time with you, and I hope that our viewers have taken away some really fantastic information today. Shout out, please do visit Ysanne's website. I put the links up on the Facebook, in the Facebook post. It's Ysanne.com, which is YSANNE.com. But please do click on the links and connect with Ysanne. She really is the most amazing lady, very heart-centered, very calming, and has got a fantastic ability to help individuals understand their time, what it represents, how to move their lives forward with an abundant joy, not just in your personal life, but with your business. So, a really fabulous lady. And I wanted to just say thank you, Ysanne, for your time. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. No doubt we'll be hooking up at the Radio Works event in September. I think is it the 2nd or the 6th of September? I think is it the 5th of September? Yeah. So yeah, the 5th. Which will be you know, fabulous. And I think for anyone that's watching, if you've not had the opportunity to come down to Radio Works events, make the news, the awards, and you know, the next event is I think it's about individuals that are being nominated for sort of outstanding achievement as individuals. So it's going to be a really fantastic evening. Very much looking forward to it. So Ysanne, I just wanted to say thank you. Both of our books have been published by Radio Works World, and Marina Nani did the foreword for your book as well, didn't she? Yeah, I was reading the foreword last night. She's got such an ability for words and to see people and to help with branding, so we both share that in common, and I think it was very appropriate that you come online this evening and I had an opportunity to speak with you. And of course, I look forward to seeing you again at the event. And thank you once again for your time, Ysanne. Just give yourself a final sign off, Ysanne, by telling the viewers, advising them what's happening, why they should consider coming to you for coaching and life change. So give yourself the biggest shout out that you can.
You're doing it for me, I think. I did want to mention about, and you're going to be hearing it so much in the news, about the eclipses coming up in August. And
Ooh.
there's total eclipse going right through America from the west to the east, finishing in Washington, the eclipse path. And we're going to be hearing a lot about that, a lot of doom mongering. And I mentioned earlier about eclipse, and eclipses can literally eclipse our own needs, and eclipses are clearing paths. If we look back in history, a lot of things end and change. To be too much of a doom-monger about it, there's sometimes leaders, there's demise of leaders and things. But I think it has been said that Donald Trump's chart links with that eclipse very strongly. But I think it's right on the fixed star Regulus, this eclipse, on the 21st of August, which is the royal star. And I do feel that it's an opportunity to look at our heart, because it's in Leo, which is the sign of the heart, making things heart-centered. And knowing what needs to leave our lives, not just what we need to build up. So I'm really recommending to people in August, less is more. Eclipses kind of zap the Earth's energy field, and it does our physical bodies. And if you're feeling tired, get those cat naps to look at what needs to leave your life. Okay, and to see then to have the space for new beginnings. So I feel August is going to be quite significant for the markets, for our own personal lives, and for decision making. It's a pivotal time.
Absolutely.
Pivotal.
So I shall be keeping my eyes on that date, that's for sure.
Yes.
I love it. I remember being at school with Eclipse, you used to have to get a little bit of paper, put the pinhole through it, and that's the only way, you know, you can look at it to enjoy it. I think one of the mobile phones has got an app now, an Eclipse app, where you can hold the phone up, you know, to
That's right. Yeah.
for your
Well,
camera.
America will be visible. But people should come and just check in on their own time. If they value their business, timing is the key, and see where they are on the map. And we all need that from time to time. And the answers are within. Usually you know them, but it's so nice to have them endorsed by an expert. That's my plug.
Totally. I mean, I think as well, a lot of decisions, you know, that we make. I know for myself personally, and perhaps people watching might understand this, but you know, we make so many decisions every single day. I'm not afraid to make decisions. I make decisions. You know, I get a bucket load wrong. In fact, I get more decisions wrong than I get right. But you only need one right decision in a day of decisions that move your business forward. As long as you're getting yourself, you know, one decent decision, that's all that matters, and you learn from the ones. But do you know what? I think the gut instinct plays such a vital part in my decision-making process. I'm sure, you know, how other people that are watching. But every time I go on my gut instinct, I'm right. Every time my gut tells me, oh, this doesn't feel right, or it doesn't. Every time I go against my gut, it doesn't work, you know. So I think you've got instinct. But you know, thank you for joining us this evening.
With fear, fear is a big fan. Yeah. And when we get fear, we panic, and we panic and we make wrong decisions. So getting fear out of the way, it's not a good advisor. We can make better decisions. Never more than now.
That's a great end comment from Ysanne Lewis. Thank you from my heart for joining this evening. This is the Diamond Show. I'm Bradley Chapman. We are broadcasting live on Radio Works World, the broadcasting platform for entrepreneurs, business, life, health, vitality. We're broadcasting around the world. The network is growing every single day. With thanks to Radio Works World, Marina 90 and Darry 90 for providing the platform. On behalf of Ysanne and myself, good evening and God bless you wherever you are around the world. You are a shining diamond, and we look forward to seeing you on the Diamond Show tomorrow evening at 8:30 p.m. slightly later tomorrow evening, because live to New York City, Brooklyn with Greg Carroll. So for myself, good evening. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and from Ysanne,
good evening, and thank you all so much for listening, and thank you so much, Bradley and Marina and Darry. I am humbled, and I send my love from my heart to you all.
Bless you. We can't be fairer than that. Love you all. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Don't forget, visit Ysanne's website, take a peek. Also take a peek at the Diamond Experience, and we look forward to seeing you in our books, in our Facebook, and at networking events, and together in our hearts and minds and souls. God bless. Good evening. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye for now.